the long wait time in hospitals and also clinics, that how that yeah, having a patient who would come in with a pain level of, let's say, 6 out of 10, and we noticed that the long wait time actually adds to, creates anxiety, more anxiety, and that anxiety adds to their perception of pain. And there's always that, like, the inner critic is like, well, what if no one buys? What if, but what if they do? Hello,
So,
hello.
yeah, welcome everyone, and please let me welcome my guest for today's podcast. Her name is Maryam, and Maryam, I would like for you to introduce yourself to our audience, who you are and what you do.
Of course, of course. Hello, everyone. Hello, listeners. I'm a behavior designer helping people actualize their visions through behavior design. I design human behavior for good with organizations that are focused on social impact or focused on well being. And as a habit coach, I work with individuals who to help them, focus and take actions in their personal and professional lives. I'm also a curator of immersive multisensory experiences, which I'd love to tell you more about that. This is exciting. And I have a wellness company called toResonate, which has a combination of wellness products that I'm working on. One is a pod, another one is a academy that I recently launched. Love to talk to you about that. And and yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And I'm just really, another hat that I wear is a innovation consultant. So I'm gonna pause here. Let's see, yeah. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
I'm doing good and so glad to have you here finally after so many hiccups. But I would like to ask you, and I'm slightly confused on the word wellness. So, what do you mean by wellness, and what products do you have around wellness?
Yeah, well, you know what? Initially, my research started when I was doing my master's at Simon Fraser University here in Vancouver, Canada. At the lab that I was working at was called the Pain Studies Lab, and our focus was on coming up with non-invasive ways of reducing pain and anxiety for chronic pain patients. So at the time, I was collaborating with a PhD student whose background is in sound design, as a sound engineer, and coupled with my background as a behavior designer and an interaction designer. We started running. We started working with doctors and clinics and hospitals in Vancouver, doing 3 phases of studies to see how to use sound as a way of reducing pain and anxiety and stress in patients who had chronic pain. So that's what we were really curious about. And that's kind of like we were looking at, for example, the long wait time in hospitals and also clinics, that how that yeah, having a patient who would come in with a pain level of, let's say, 6 out of 10, and we noticed that the long wait time actually adds to, creates anxiety, more anxiety, and that anxiety adds to their perception of pain. So when by the time they get to see their doctor, when they report what their pain level is, they're no longer reported as, let's say, 6 out of 10. Now it's like 9 or 10 out of 10, because of that perception of pain. So which leads to, um, their doctor prescribing higher dose of opioid, and it can lead to opioid addiction and all that. So that was one of the areas that led us into coming up with, um, these like evidence-based, research-based composition, musical composition, which we were able to, within 5 minutes, reduce pain and anxiety in chronic pain patients. And then so that kind of opened up this door of, okay, once our studies was done, we thought, okay, let's build a prototype of using we were using biosensors.
Mhm.
So at our last study, which was at St. Paul hospitals here, we're working with patients at a GI unit right before they would go to for their surgery. Their anxiety was quite high, and we hooked them up to thought technology, which is like a medical grade biosensors, right?
Hmm.
And we hooked them up to HRV, heart rate variability, and also GSR, galvanic skin response, to measure their stress level and heart rate variability. And we saw that and created a baseline to see where they were at, and their anxiety was quite high. And after 5 minutes of listening to our conversation, their anxiety dropped dramatically. And so that was the quantitative data that we captured, but we also captured qualitative data, verbally communicating their experience of how they had like positive memory recall. So I know that's like a long route of going to like to answer your question around wellness. That's sort of how it started. And I started working then with a lab out of Stanford called Transformative Technology Lab, and
Hmm.
launched the second chapter of Transformative Technology Lab after London, launched the Vancouver chapter here. And when I say wellness, we're focused on any technology that helps with mental health, emotional well-being, and human thriving, right? So that's what, you know, the umbrella where toResonate is, my company called toResonate. And so we're creating technologies to be able to, um, yeah, you know, help you with your mental health, emotional well-being, human thriving, and really focus on anxiety, stress, and pain. So that's sort of what I meant. Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. And I've always like listened about that how music can help calm someone down when they are in a stressful situation. So, is there any
Mhm.
scientific reason? Like, is there some areas in the brain which correlate with pain? At the same time, they respond to the music as well.
So that's a really good question, and that's the area that we would have liked to research more, but we haven't really taken a look at that to look at the effects on different brain waves, right? But we did
Hmm.
experiment with using kind of like using our own composition and using the Muse headset instead of using their platform, use the Muse headset, and to see what kind of data we get from their platform, whether like
Hmm.
which brainwave it taps into, alpha brainwave or beta brainwave. So that's sort of like how this whole journey started into, and then, and I've always been fascinated with like architecture and spaces and how, you know, different spaces makes us feel. I mean, I don't know if you probably have experiences when you walk into some spaces, it just makes you feel so inspired, so like calm, and there are spaces that gives you anxiety. So what is it about different spaces? So the work I'm doing right now is like at the intersection of architecture, science of music, science of light, science of color, and behavior design, and biometrics data, biosensors. So that's kind of where the focus is right now, to build an enclosed pod. um, yeah, that's, yeah, for particularly was thinking for frontline healthcare workers, but there are different
Hmm.
demographics. Yeah, but that's what I was thinking. Hmm.
Yeah, very interesting. And actually, I read it somewhere, or I think I have listened on a video that the soundscape surrounding you affects you a lot. Let's
Hmm.
say if you're in a city and there's a very noisy environment, like there's traffic, there's like some construction work going on, or there's a huge crowd and stuff like that, it makes you physically anxious. So,
Yeah.
have you observed this effect too? Like, is there any correlation between being anxious and being like having a better soundscape? Does it correlate between mental health issues?
Yeah, definitely. There has been actually a study. It's like, so your nervous system goes from, parasympathetic. So it goes from like fight or flight,
Mhm.
So here's what happens is that there was a study that was done looking at people who lived close to the airport, Airport, and the planes taking off and landing, taking off, and sometimes you have metro in the background or, um, you know, um, so yeah, so you've got the metro in the background, you have all these noise, and we think that it doesn't have an effect on us because just like very similar to when you watch a commercial, you're like, oh, it's a commercial, you kind of like, um, ignore it, or you just, tone it out, zone out, right? It's very similar with this kind of noise or construction. You feel like it's not affecting your body, but it's actually, it does affect your nervous system. So put your nervous system in like, it taps into the sympathetic nervous system, like fight or flight. And what they noticed that it actually increased the rate of stroke. So in that study, we also did sort of like a performance, like at a superhuman summit, where we were demonstrating within 4 minutes that 1 minute of like listening to urban noise, as you're saying, like construction, um, ambulance, like sirens and all of that. And then we had our participants hooked up to biofeedback, and we were visualizing the data live. So people were seeing that in 1 minute how the anxiety spiked. And after 3 minutes of listening to our composition, their anxiety dropped dramatically. So their nervous system like was able to switch to parasympathetic, just like calm and relaxing. So yeah, it definitely makes an impact, um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I was just having this thought like, is there any studies done on like the soundscape you have versus the rate of crime you have? Like, is there any? Because what I observed when I visited the big cities here, like the people are very enraged, and even at the slightest, like they will get instigated and they will get very violent at very normal thing which a common person would consider like it's not worth fighting over. But the people
Mm-hmm.
in the city, I've noticed that they get very anxious or very aggressive over certain aspect of just common natural things. So I'm really
Mm-hmm.
curious, like if there are studies or not. So that's what I was thinking when you were describing that it has an effect on our nervous system, which is basically fight or fight reaction.
Yeah, I mean, there are studies and the correlation between that and crime. I'm not quite sure, but I can tell you that when people are just going around about their day and constantly there's like so much noise that's hitting their body, right? And they just feel, without them knowing, they're just like feeling super anxious. And on top of that, the crowd, and then busy cities, yeah, definitely you feel anxious. On top of that, like other, if you're trying to meet your basic human needs and just surviving, it just, yeah, it's not an excuse though for crime, but yeah, it does I think have an effect. And I'm not sure of the studies, I'm sure that are out there, but in correlation between that and crime, it would be interesting to have a look at. Yeah,
Yeah.
so right now, I'm actually working on, I launched my toResonate Academy, which I'm like really excited about that, and focusing on working with coaches and counselors and startup founders. And another demographic that I'm working with are builders, makers, designers who work directly with architecture firms.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit more about that as well. But that's a project that I'm really excited about right now that I'm working on.
Yeah. Actually, I'm for personal reasons. I'm very curious about coaches and consultants. So like to ask you this question: like, what are the challenges they face when they're just starting out? It might be.
Yeah. So what I noticed, since last October, I've been actually teaching at a college here in Vancouver. I've been teaching coaches, counselors, and nutritionists personal and professional development. And what I
Mhm.
notice is that, yeah, there's even though that course is supposed to give them the tools to get them ready for, once they graduate, get out there, be able to start their own business. But really, the way it was set up, it wasn't. And I wasn't able to tweak the curriculum because the school wouldn't let me. But I started noticing that what the students were coming to me for and what they were asking and what they needed. For most of them, it's just like the idea of starting their own business was really terrifying. Like, mainly, it's like, how do I find clients? And the idea of niching down, and this because we're in the pro group and everyone's like so terrified of niching down. Um, and they find out, but I don't want to be committing to like one demographic. What if it's going to limit me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of the challenges is like, one, even if they want to work for an organization, right, as coaches and counselors, and then they don't have to worry about business development. One is like, okay, preparing their CV and everything to be able to land jobs there. Another is like, how do I even get my business off the ground? How do I do, for example, a lot of it is like, also they talk about is, but what if I don't want to be on social media? What do I have to be on Instagram? Do I have to be posting all the time? And honestly, I think the answer is no. It really depends. Like, you don't necessarily, so it's like they think they have to be on all these platforms, but like TikTok is exhausting, Instagram, like I just don't want to be on all these platforms. And then questions around like what to put on their website, questions around payments and contracts and agreements, just like basically how to go from like get the whole thing set up, but really finding and how to set up workshops. If they want to do workshops, want a one-on-one, how do you set up workshops and how do you design the whole experience? Um, there's a lot of question I get asked around designing workshop, designing the experiences and building
Mm-hmm.
programs and courses and even their one-on-ones. What would that look like?
Yeah.
So there's also, yeah, a lot of fear of like, well, what if, and also, what, like they all want to be charging hourly based pricing and based, I think Crystal always talks about like, switching to value based pricing and also building that confidence, the confidence of being able to charge more, and I
Mm-hmm.
think we all have like money traumas. And so that's one of the things that hold, kind of like hold them back as well. The relationship with the money as well, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. So there's a
Yeah.
like a lot going on there. But yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
super fun. Like right now, I'm just really passionate about working with women um, who want to start their business, and some of
Mm-hmm.
their backgrounds is like these are some of them. Like I'm really passionate about this because like I've been in situations like that, and I just feel like, okay, how do we help these women to turn their education into income? And I remember when I became a coach in 2016, also I struggled. I'm like, okay, I'm done with this program, but how do I price? And I help them to, you know, um, price and create offers, creative
Mm-hmm.
offers, and price and package it and put it out there, which is really sometimes hard for them to do. Is like, how do we do that? Um, Even for me, when I finished my program, I just didn't know like how do I put myself out there and how do I price and package my offers? Like how do you create offers? So it's really like, brand strategy, price and packaging offers in a creative way, the storytelling aspect, and creating like paid communities. Like what do partnerships, sponsorships, and contracts looks like, and system and processes, right?
Yeah.
So really want to work with women who um, some of them are single moms and they went through this program and they really want to be financially independent. But also, like, they have this other 9 to 5 job and doing something else that is not related to their work, which is like soul crushing. There are women who are, stuck in relationships and or marriages that are no longer serving them but are there for financial means. and I like my heart really goes out to them, and I really really want to help them out to become financially independent. And there are women who switch from like careers such as being a lawyer or engineer, and they just simply didn't see themselves on that stressful, jobs, and they want a different life. And now that the program is over, they're just like kind of in a fear and, oh my god, what if I can't find clients and I have to go back to
Mhm.
that, or like, was that the waste of 2 years? So I'm dedicated from now till like the end of the year, wanting to work with 10 women coaches and counselors to really build up their business, and from the second month start putting offers out there and bringing clients.
That's very interesting and highly commendable. Actually, I've noticed this with myself in every new creator or businessman who's just starting out to create their own business. I think there are a lot of more core mindset problems which we don't have solutions for. Therefore, we go and look for solution for technical terms like how to create proposal, how can should I be on every social media platform. But deep down, there are much more core personality issues, or what I can say mindset issues at the core. Like
Hmm.
I'm not self-sufficient. I feel like what's like imposter syndrome. So there are stuff
Yeah.
like that. So have you noticed this with the new creators or new coaches who are just starting out? They've been trained. They have skills to coach someone, but they lack the business skills mostly, or maybe the
Hmm.
mindset to be a businessman.
Definitely. And that's why I noticed that the best way is to explain my process to them and trust in the process, because my process is I apply behavior design and design thinking in this whole process. For me is because I've noticed that sometimes like we're in a session together and they're like, well, how about this offer, how about that offer? But I'm like, well, this is not a very client centric design approach, right? Let's do things in parallel. For me, it's all about experimentation and, quick turnarounds, iterating and iterating. And from the second week of working together, I help them to create, and this is very uncomfortable for them. And I'll tell you why. And this is what we're trying to work towards. But the cool thing is with working with coaches and counselors is that they have such an awareness that they already know. They're like, oh, I noticed myself. I noticed that this inner critic came up, that I am actually holding myself back, but I'm working through it and I'm journaling, which is like so fascinating to be working with them because they're so self aware and they understand that when they're holding themselves back. And so what I push them to do is that after the first week, we have a rough understanding of who they want to be serving. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just give it a try. You don't have to be dedicated to this particular niche. You don't have to be dedicated to them for like more than 2 weeks or a month. You're just going to be, what I want you to do is start, you know, doing customer discovery, start booking 10 calls per week. Between 5 to 10 calls, just put it out there that this is the research area. This is a particular area that you're working on. Let's say if their focus is like helping people through going through times of change, like there was some sort of a trauma, something happened, whether it was a health issue, whether it was divorce, whatever it was. Let's book a call with people who have gone through these experiences and figure out what are some of the pains and challenges that they have right now, right? And you kind of have these assumptions and ideas of what you want to be creating, right? That I want my offer to be this, which is great to have clarity on that. But at the same time, in parallel, we need to validate the service. It's like product market
Mhm.
fit, like service market fit, validate and then to see that is this what the market needs, right? So is that part is like creating perhaps like Instagram carousel or an sort of an ask and put it out there to see, hey, I'm doing research in this area. I want to talk to women between, let's say, this age group who's interested to have a chat with me. Even doing that is just terrifying. It's like, well, what's going to happen next? What if they don't come? What's going to happen? And So yeah, it's and they're like, Wouldn't it be better if I just put my offer out there and see?" Yeah, we're doing both in parallel, but it's good to get started and have conversations, because going through the sales funnel, we know the first step is awareness, but you putting
Hmm.
yourself out there and saying you're doing that type of research and you're having conversations around it, you people are becoming even aware of you. It's like, oh, okay, this is the area of your research, this is the area that we want to help people with. So yeah, we see that as well. Just putting that out there is kind of terrifying. It's like, what
Hmm.
if no
Yeah.
one comes, right? And there's always that, like, the inner critic is like, well, what if no one buys? What if but what if they do?
Yeah.
Right.
Success is another challenge.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a numbers game. It's like every week talk to 5 to 10 people, right? And also overcoming, know that if someone says no to you, like, also working towards, like, not taking that personally, that they're not rejecting you. Maybe there are other things in their lives that are happening as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It takes a lot of practice, like getting rejections and paying yourself once again to do your go out there. Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
right.
you introduced a very interesting term in there. That was behavior design. What do you mean by that, behavior design?
Oh, behavior design is an approach which was developed by Stanford behavior scientist and New York Times bestselling author Dr. BJ Fogg, that aims to
Hmm.
understand human behavior. So, with models that are simple to understand and easy to apply, its methods are designed to create, like, lasting change, empower innovators, and help people become happier and healthier. Essentially, it's a 7 step process to innovation. And what we do, let's say if there's something that, um, if there's a behavior that you want a certain demographic to do,
Hmm.
through testing, which in behavior design is called snap testing, you can figure out the specific behavior sequences that's going to actually get people doing the things that you want them to do, right? To create a hook factor. So, for example, um, yeah, it's a new approach of understanding human behavior and how to design for behavior change. And we use behavior design to create, like, solutions that users really want to use, right? So it's not about something that you think that you should do, but it's something that you want to do, right? So, for example, let's say, um, I'm gonna, yeah. Um, so let's say, for example, if you're building a platform and you want people to do, I don't know, something like go for more walks, right? And everyone was very much different. And behavior design is not focused on the motivation or your willpower. Is for that, like, what I look at is that I apply the AARRR framework, which is acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue. So when we're designing a platform, I run behavior design through each of those, like thinking about, okay, if we want, a community to acquire a certain platform that's gonna bring about positive behavior change, what are the exact behavior sequences that gonna, help them do that? And I run experiments to figure out, by, like, let's say, onboarding 10 users per week and talking and running experiments, kind of Wizard of Ozing the whole what would happen in the platform using existing tools,
Hmm.
and to figure out what that behavior sequence is once we master that. And maybe for different users would be different for different archetypes, so that's good to know too. And then once they're there, like, how do we make sure they activate, like they actually register, the app, right? And what would that process look like? How do we make it seamless and how do we make it easy? Sometimes you use an app, you open it up and you're just like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to use this anymore. And a lot of times the thing is with behavior design, it helps people to make sure that, people sometimes think that work in silos, just like when I'm working with coaches and counselors as well. working in silos and thinking that I'm gonna just like in my own room create this service, and then once I put it out there after a month or after 2 months, once I perfected it, then people are gonna come, right, without any testing. But what behavior design does is that through this iterative, process, it helps people to validate everything so that by the time like when they launch it, they have already gone through so many iterations that they know that they're gonna get a buy-in, you know um
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very interesting. And like through the behavior design, can you influence the behavior of user to make a certain decision? Let's say spend more time on the app or buy this
Yeah.
product. Or interesting.
Hmm.
So, do you think like the social media giants of today are
They
using
have.
these behavior design?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Is there
actually,
any
yeah.
specific case? Can you
It,
show an example?
yeah, so like the founder of Instagram, one of the founders of Instagram, he actually took the same program that I took at Stanford with Dr.
Mm-hmm.
BJ Fogg, and he uses the behavior design models that I learned as well for Instagram to create the hook factor. The thing is, though, um, I personally, that's why I said that I only do behavior design for good, meaning that I only want to create platforms that bring about positive behavior change or apply behavior design for projects that are good, not for, that would cause more, you know, mental health issues or, yeah. So that's my own personal value. Yeah, but
Yeah.
definitely I mean, I don't know if you watched the documentary Social Dilemma. It talks about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, you have. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Hmm.
And it was very interesting for me to notice that they have enough data on a single person that they can pretty much model their whole behavior. So
Hmm.
it was very interesting for me, and I think there's not enough awareness around these type of techniques we use,
Hmm.
and as some people call it dark UX, like you are using this much amount of data which might not be ethical or not. So there's
Hmm.
still not no consent over like is it ethical to do such practices or not. Yeah, it's a very interesting.
Honestly, I think though everything comes back to awareness. Like for example, our
Hmm.
phone is giving us tons of data. How much time are you spending? If you turn it on, go under setting and turn it on, like how much time you're spending on Instagram or other social media, right? Um, and if you're noticing, like, start tracking how you're feeling or afterwards, right? So I have this thing that where during the day you can track anything, any activity or any interaction with anyone that energizes you, give it a letter grade A. Anything that's neutral is B, and anything that's draining you is C. And maybe like for a day or two or a week, if you can, create an Excel sheet or put it on your note app, and just becoming more aware that checking in with your body, checking in with yourself, and seeing how did I feel after, like, oh my god, all of a sudden I spent an hour, let's say, on social media. How did that make me feel? And maybe quickly journal about it and put that letter grade, because we have the power ourselves to switch off some of those apps, like turn off notifications. I mean, Near Eyal, he wrote the book Indistractable, and he's got tons of tools in there that talks about, what, the same methodologies of behavior design can be applied to coming up with, how to create, like putting your phone on, um, you know, airplane mode, or like putting limits. Your phone gives you capabilities of putting limits on how many hours per day you want to be spending on each app, and afterwards that wouldn't allow you to do, so we can design what the experience is going to be like with technology, right?
Yeah.
It's just like watching TV as well. I mean, I don't think it makes a
Hmm.
difference. I mean, even, yeah, there are a lot of like different technology out there, like AR, VR, our phone, but even we could be immersed completely for hours watching TV as well. And Netflix actually has applied the similar thing too, which makes it super easy just by as soon as you're done with one episode, it goes to the next. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
but even with that, if you go to their setting, you can switch that off. So we do have the power, we just have to have the awareness and know that, okay, I'm in control of my life.
Yeah.
Mm,
Interestingly, I also have that digital well-being app, and there you can monitor what apps are you using the most. And I've noticed that our brain is not very good with numbers. Like it doesn't understand what does 1 hour, what does 2 hour means in the long term. So,
mm,
and also the social media apps have done something. I don't know what they have created. Maybe it's a FOMO, or
mm-hmm.
that's what I'm curious about. Like, what do they do through their app design which makes it very addictive?
Yeah, I think it's the power of the community. When they create that community of your friends can give you likes and that instant gratification. Yeah, I think it needs some personal development, working, doing some inner work to understand, do I really want these instant gratifications? And how are these instant gratifications and likes are actually translating into my short-term and long-term goals? Like, what is the contribution of being there? It's like, great, I got all these likes. Oh my God, I was so immersed. Like, let's say when you post something on social media, um, and I think Chris talks about this too, is like, what are you, I'm talking about Christo for those of you who like don't know who I'm talking about. Um, that is like, what are you using your social media for? If it's for business, and sometimes are we getting so attached to, once we post something, seeing like, what are the comments, what are the likes, what are the things that people are getting, and the next thing you know, you post one thing that's supposed to generate leads or generate like interest, but you notice yourself spending like half a day just, you know, getting this high, being so high on life, or maybe like, I don't know, maybe the comments weren't good. I'm feeling like so awful, right? Which is like, why are we allowing these external things to influence our inner world, right? So I think the work like meditation and becoming more aware is that, what was the intention? Why did I even post this? If it's for my business, what are the metrics? What am I looking for? And how is like spending half a day um, obsessing over the likes and everything? How is that contributing to my business? And to be honest with you, I'm not really posting that much on social media. I haven't, and I'm still making six figure. So that's why when I talk to coaches and counselors, I'm like, there are different ways of doing this. The old school way of still like going out there, being in the community or making connections and, contracts and like doing, yeah, like different building partnerships. Still, you can tap into different communities that who already have followings if you don't have it, and utilize that. Like, there are different ways of bringing people towards, what you have to be doing. It's all about energy allocation. Like, where
Mhm.
is your energy best to be spent? And of course, I have recognized the downsides of myself, like not posting so much on social media. I think it has to be done in parallel, because sometimes people are like, well, then what do you do? It's so mysterious. What is it that you're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, not everything is about money. I get that. But I'm just saying that for people who are just really thinking that they spreading their energy thin, being on all these different platforms, and recognize that the people who are on all these different platforms, they didn't start off being on all of them at the same time. You know, they start with
Yep.
one thing, you build it, and then go into another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's very
yeah, we're
interesting. Actually, I've noticed this, and I don't know. I was talking to someone, and they said that you shouldn't focus on building your personal brand if you are earning less than six figures, and that really stuck with me. Like you should start focusing on your business first, like building business relationships. Then, if you have time, then if you have resources to allocate to, like you can hire a designer, you can hire a video editor, can create specific content for you, and you will have now leverage to deliver consistent content over time. So
Exactly. So
that's the
true
trend I've
because
noticed.
so true. Sometimes I notice is like being on calls, right? Going, being on calls and listening to the experts from like one call to the next to the next to the next. I was actually thinking like, oh, I'm getting something done, because it felt good being in the presence of, receiving all this knowledge, right? But then I'm like, well, where's my time going? Where's my day going? How am I actually applying what I'm learning? Because there's so many books on like people get so addicted sometimes, and myself too. Like, going from this one conference to the next, or like reading this book without, it's like you can just read one book and just start integrating and applying what it's saying, right? And experimenting. And that, yeah, I just noticed it's like, again, instant gratification. It's like, where's my time going? So I love tracking my time too, just noticing it's like, oh, where did my time go? What am I doing?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true.
it's very difficult to battle between delayed gratification and instant gratification. So you talked about being a tiny habit certified coach. So what do you mean by that, tiny habits? Actually, I haven't read the book, so it's a complete new territory for me.
Tiny habits very similar to behavior design. It's just like tiny habits is under the umbrella of behavior design, and it there it just gives you all these tools of breaking things down in smaller pieces that you can get it done. That is not overwhelming, and it's something that you can actually do. And creating anchors, for example, you can come up with tiny habits recipes. There's this thing called the pearl habit, which is when something is like really annoying you and bothering you. Let's say if there's someone in your life that you're interacting with, and when they see you, somehow they want to, it turns into an argument. Like they just
Mhm.
can't help it, You interact and then it turns into an argument. And of course, it's very unsettling. It's not fun. So
Yeah.
something, a tiny habit recipe for that would be like, which is called the pearl habit, something that's annoying. It's like after I notice that I feel like super anxious, stressed out by this interaction, mm, I'm going to put my headphones on and listen to an audiobook, let's say, of like your favorite audiobook, or it could be music, or it could be whatever. Usually, there's something with the recipes, is usually we want to create anchors to something that is already existing in your environment, right? So we attach that to something that's existing, and then you do something that is a positive behavior, right? And then over time, you can see that each time that something annoying happened, you put audiobook on. First of all, it relaxes you, or listen to music. It's like, okay, I just finished a whole book. So this is actually turning to something positive. Or if you want to, like, let's say, um, if someone wants to start losing weight, or, um, sometimes it's like really overwhelming, and we just break it down, is that, figure out there are things that we do multiple times in a day, like such as like flushing the toilet and all of that, right? So if you are in the bathroom in front of the mirror or whatever, you flush the toilet. So it could be like, after I flush the toilet, I do one squat, right? And the thing is that you want to break down the behavior like so tiny, that is like 30 seconds or something, and that it's doable, and you feel that excitement, um, that you achieve something. I know sometimes people are like, well, is that even going to make a difference? But the thing is, like, it's all about the art of getting started, and that's usually the hardest part. So then if you're able to do one, usually I notice that if I do one, sometimes I do more, right? And the days that
Mhm.
maybe but my body is not really feeling it, even doing that one, creates that routine, and the habit going. So, and another thing that's really helpful with tiny habits is the science of celebration. That's really key to rewiring your brain. So after you do, let's say that after I flush the toilet and I do one squat, and just like celebrating, and celebrating doesn't mean like you're gonna go like have a chocolate or whatever. Celebrating is more like changing your language and physiology and being like, yes, I did it, like good job. And sometimes people at the beginning, they're like, your inner critic goes, and it's like you feel like, well, did I even do anything? Did I even achieve anything? Right?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, but the more you do it, you fake it, and you kind of the synapses in your brain start firing off, and create new pathways of you just start feeling good. We change best by feeling good, by not feeling bad. So yeah, I know sometimes, like even culturally in our cultures, we think that if we are, I don't know, punishing someone, that they're going to learn something and they're going to change their
Yeah.
behavior. Is actually the opposite. They might hide things from you. They will change their
Yeah.
behavior, but it's not going to be for good. They may not feel open enough to feel comfortable enough to open up anymore, because they're like, well, if this is a reaction that I'm receiving when I open up, then it's causing me to change my behavior and maybe hide things now, right? So just remembering that people change best by feeling good, not feeling bad. So how do we manage our own reactions toward things that trigger us? That's so important. And honestly, that's something that I've had such a hard time with for a long time, and I've been working on that. Just, when your inner critic goes off and you get triggered by something, like how do you show up? So that space between getting triggered and responding, how can I increase that space so I'm not reacting right away? Because that reaction, whatever it is, if it's not kind, then yeah, that's one way of people changing their behavior towards you, right? Yeah, so you can pretty much apply tiny habits to everything, all aspects of your life, like anything you want to get done. Hmm.
Yeah. And I just realized like how much your conditioning takes place. Like your inner critic, your inner voice, is most likely a voice of someone from your childhood who was there, like you did something wrong or like made a mistake, and he was out there just to punish you. So your
Right?
inner critic does the same, and you are like, I will not address this because my inner critic would like to punish me.
I
So
know,
that's a very
right?
interesting observation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also, whose voice is in my head? Is it my parents' voice?
Yeah.
Whose voice is it? Yeah, and why am I being so cruel to myself? If a friend talked like that to me, would I even tolerate them? You know? So true.
Yeah.
So true. Hmm.
Yeah. On that note, Maryam, this was an amazing conversation, and yeah, this just made me think a lot. Like I have to do how to replace my habits with good one. So it's an interesting approach for me. So yeah, please let us know,
Yeah.
to the listeners and who is watching, where we can find you and how to approach you.
Yeah. So my Instagram handle is at the lucid self, which comes from the book, that one of my favorite books, called Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Chapter 4 is called The Lucid Self. And my business one is called at toResonate. So they can find me there, message me, and then email is Maryam at toResonate.com. So that's where they can find me, or on LinkedIn, but there are a lot of people with
Yeah,
my name. So I think Instagram is the best way to go about it. It was so
awesome.
lovely chatting with you. I'm really excited we did
Yeah,
this.
same here. It
Yeah.
was a wonderful experience. And yeah, I will link it in the description, so make sure to check it out. And yeah, awesome.